on Facebook.
Are we live? It's almost live.
No, it's live. It's live right now.
It's live right now.
But
we're going. We're live.
We are live
I've
with the
never been
Pyramid
live.
Podcast. I got the homie AJ, really dope tattoo artist. If you guys have any questions or anything, let us know in the comments. Yeah, I'm just checking the volume here. Waiting for somebody.
This
to
is
get
good. Nope.
I'll
Does
see here.
it tell you?
When I check on my phone, it like echoes from the mics, and it just like
Feedback.
Crazy feedback.
Ba-bam, ba-bam.
And I'm like so like stupid with computers and all. Like I bought this and I like set it up and did it like 100 times before, trying to figure out like. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Pyramid Podcast by your boy Capital D. It's the Pyramid Podcast on all platforms. You can check out the Patreon. It's a little rusty. I just made it the other night. It's going to be updated, and I'm just learning how to use it. But you can go to the Patreon and check that out. Try to get the bills paid here. Pay the mortgage. No, I'm joking. But actually, this place is so fucking cheap.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like because it's so fucking old. It's like the mortgage here is $700.
Oh nice.
Split between two people.
Very few people can say that right now.
Right? Like we got it the perfect fucking time, dude.
Yeah. Lucky.
But yeah, if you guys ever want tattoos, get at your boy AJ personally. He's
Yes, indeed.
insanely good tattoo artist. I probably won't ever get a tattoo from anybody else ever again, as long as I live in Calgary, because it's just like the tattoos I got, I absolutely love. The line work is like fucking beautiful. I always had like bad decisions with my tattoos before, and then when I like kind of got a couple bad ones, I was just like learning how to like get placement and like pick someone and kind of like get to know them and shit and look at their work and stuff, not just like go off the bat. And I don't hate my tattoos I have now, but I just love the ones that you did on me. They're fucking amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude.
I just try and do the best I can.
Can I ask you how long have you been tattooing?
It's been like 10 years now.
10 years? That's insane.
But I definitely like. Thanks for the compliments and stuff, but I certainly feel like I'm only kind of like barely in the middle. You know what I mean? Like in the class of tattooers in the world. So it's
I love
like,
that you say that.
But yeah,
Because
I'm glad that you're very happy with your tattoos. You and Tara, yeah.
And like I feel like dude, hers are amazing. She's like hers are so realistic, and the color just looks like real skin pigment. Like it just looks amazing, like the color. But what was I gonna say? I'm fumbling here. What was I gonna say? How long have you been tattooing? Oh, you're a conspiracy nut, eh?
Yeah, like I guess
Conspiracies or
like
what?
when you, I feel like is it a conspiracy? Is it conspiracy?
It's not
It's like-
conspiracy theory.
It's
It is a conspiracy.
It's a theory if it's not if it's a theory, but as soon as it's like real, then is it a conspiracy? Like I feel like this is a word that's just thrown around a lot, and people are like, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory," but it's like, no. This is a thought about actions. This is not necessarily just like what's the definition of conspiracy? Let me look this up. Like, what's the actual conspiracy? I feel like this only really got big after Mel Gibson and the movie. You know what I mean?
Which movie?
Conspiracy theory.
Oh, what? I don't know if I saw that.
Yeah, Mel Gibson, conspiracy theory. Conspiracy. Yeah, Mel Gibson, conspiracy theory. That came out in 1997. You know what I mean? And prior to that, conspiracy theory wasn't really a big thing. You know, conspiracy meaning is a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. You know what I mean? And it's like that may not necessarily like.
I throw those words
It's
around
gotta be-
loosely when I say them.
It's got to be like a group of people planning, but a group of people is just two people, right? Does does that consist of group? Does it have to be three? Does it have to be three people?
I think
So you have three corporate owners out there who have similar interests. Say, let's give an example of the telemarketing industry in Canada. You have three big corporations: Bell, Telus, Rogers, right? And they all want to own, like, they all have major stakes in the communication abilities of all Canadians. And so then you have these three big companies, and the three CEO owners happen to decide all together that, like, even though they claim it's independent, they're going to set the prices at this much because that's the market value.
it's monopoly.
It's a monopoly. It's not a monopoly. It's a what do they call it? There's a word for it, and it's not a single monopoly. It's like not an oligopoly. It's like a fucking I think it's an oligopoly.
I never heard of that term before. I'll have to
An
look that up.
oligarchy is a small group of people who govern, right?
Okay.
Like in a early democracy in Greek governance. That's when we learned about an oligarchy. It's like a small group of people who rule over the people. This is when the idea of like democracy and democratic parliament kind of came about in a sense. Well, supposedly European history, right? And then, so oligopoly is like several people who have a monopoly in unison. But because they have the monopoly in unison, they don't breach the Canadian law that says you cannot have a single company having a monopoly. But then you can't have you have three of these guys that are all just working together, and people don't necessarily have to. Like, if I know that you're a farmer and you're killing this many cows every year, you know what I mean? If I want to make plans because I know that you're doing that, and then that's going to result in people eating more meat, so then me as a doctor, I'm going to be seeing more patients because it's like, well, more people are going to get sick because they're eating this type of food or that type of food or whatever. Diet's so crazy these days. How do you even know what diet to eat? You have like experts across the board on both sides of the fence, like keto this, just keto the whole time. Look at the results I got from keto. Then
could you explain to me what keto is again? Sorry, I've heard it and I knew
I'm
it
not a
wasn't.
huge expert on like the nutritional aspects of it, but
Just like what in your opinion?
like from what I know of keto, it's basically just eating strictly like meats.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like you're basically eating just meat, and I think some starches.
There's a
You know
guy
what I
I
mean?
follow that does that. He just eats raw meat. He's like every day on social media smashing raw testicles every day.
The Liver King.
No, that
No.
guy. This is just a
Different
random
guy.
guy who lives in like Thailand. He's like a white bald dude who's got tattoos or whatever. I know the Liver King.
You knew what people just ate meat for the longest time, like, you know what I mean? Just seal
I don't know.
seal meat, whale meat, salmon, like there's different cultures of people around the world, and there's a lot of Asian countries that like are really heavy on their vegetables. You know what I mean? They don't eat much protein; they eat more vegetables.
That's what I tell people all the time.
So it's like there's balance everywhere. I don't know. Like I think it's everybody.
Don't they have like less heart disease too, though?
You know what?
Because of that,
Everybody
so they
around
have-
the world has differing data on all this shit. Who's the person reviewing all the data that's reviewed? You know what I mean? So you have-
regurgitated someone's
exactly. Like half the data out there that we're using, like we're using Wikipedia. We could Google something on Wikipedia
I could just
right now.
yeah,
Someone can go on Wikipedia and edit what we were just reading.
Yeah.
So okay, maybe someone will come and fact check that tomorrow or the next day or something. You know what I mean? Maybe, but maybe someone changes it and then it stays that way for a year. And for that year, everybody who checked on that fucking fact has got the wrong facts now. You know what I mean? There's tons of things that I think of that I'm like, oh, I remember when I learned this. And this is this thing that I know. And I've always thought this thing. And then all of a sudden you tell someone because you're like, oh, look at this cool story I remember. Let me tell you about it, And then all of a sudden you look it up they're like, I don't know if I believe that. And you look it up online. Oh, no, actually that was like 10 times the amount of what I thought it was. Or this is the wrong place. Or it was only like 2 people, not 10. Or
there's way more wrong information than right information on the
there's
internet.
just so much information. And instead of an education system that's like teaching people how to think, or you know what I mean, and like how to analyze something and how to figure out if something is right or is wrong, we got an education system of what to think. You should think this. you should think that there's issues like climate change or there's issues like whatever, and then you should think this is how you should solve them. You know what I mean? Instead of like the truly capitalist values of like, well, let a whole bunch of people try a whole bunch of ideas on how to solve this problem to make it something functional and beneficial for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily was
wish.
capitalism always just endowed with like um, strictly creating a profit. You know what I mean? Like, part of capitalist growth is exploring new services and products that have a function in providing amenity in society. Right, because assumedly we've taken care of our necessities, you know. So everything we're developing now is all entertainment, is all like extracurricular. It's like I want a different type of home to live in because we've invented homes. There's a safe place you can build that you can go into that you can close and shut yourself off from the environment and be protected from animals and diseases and windstorms and rain and all the cold and the heat and
I don't
all
think we
that
should
shit.
have to pay for them. I know it sounds crazy, but
No,
I don't
not
think
at
we should
all.
have to
Like,
pay for it.
it's ridiculous that any necessities in life right now, with like the abundance in the world, I think it's ridiculous that any of the necessities of life have to be paid for, and not because I'm some like crazy socialist who thinks everything should be free. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying everybody should have it for free. I'm saying everybody should have it.
Yeah.
That cost. So like some guy producing steel in the states, let's say, for example, or coal, was doing that before and then selling their product to other Americans, and they were their American buddies what the American living wage was considered, and then they were like, the person buying that product, whoever owned that company, was like, I want to make more money than I already make. Your business model should already be sustainable if your business is going to exist in terms of capitalism. If you're not getting a bailout from the government, your shit should hold water. It should work on its own. You're providing a service or a functional product. You should be producing that at a rate of which it's in demand for,
Dude, LA,
right?
like I just feel like the homelessness there
change. He's waiting for change. You know what I mean? But he's
a
what he
job.
needs is real change. He
Yeah.
needs change in his life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the only way he's gonna get that is through guidance, because the fact is he's where he's disability. Do you have a mental disability that's not being diagnosed? Like, instead of medication, they need actual time and attention. And our society has been so focused, like I said, with the education of, instead of how to think, it's what to think. And now we're taught what to supposed to be like, hey, we got like capitalist companies, and we have, like, people can make private companies, and they can do this, make business and become a millionaire, become a billionaire if you want to. But we have a social system set up where everybody gives a little bit, so that those who need it, because it's like sometimes you get in an accident where one person gets like hella damaged and another person gets like barely anything, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Shit like that.
Yeah, no, I've been
Weird
I've been
angles
to
and
many of
stuff.
them. No, I've
I
been
don't
in many of them.
You could rant all day about that shit.
Just a lot of cars are made of fucking heavy steel, and some of them are made of cheap
Plastic,
plastic.
yeah.
And you hit it with that heavy
Right?
bumper made from the 80s in the
Uh-huh.
big ass Bronc or whatever, like your big ass truck,
Mhm,
and you fucking
mhm.
shatter that bitch. Sorry for we disconnected there. I had to change the pixel rate from 720 to 480 because the connection, it just, I don't know, where the neighborhood we're in, it doesn't. I think we're getting a better one soon here with TELUS. Edmonton has something that's where Calgary's going to get. It's like a bigger range. So I just had to go down in pixels. Pretty soon I'm going to have better connection. What do you
It's
think?
Ogden. What can you do, right? Like,
I'm just new to the neighborhood. It kind of reminds me of the one I grew up in, Glendale and Red Deer.
no,
It's
yeah.
like just, like friendly neighborhood. Like I work with two guys that grew up in Ogden, and they're just down
Yeah.
the road. Like it's like, it's just chill.
I didn't grow up here, but I moved here like 15, 16 years ago, and it's Ogden, man. You can tell how this used to be like a little town. There's like 15 churches within like a couple block radius. It's like crazy.
Oh yeah,
around
no,
here.
I didn't
Yeah.
even notice that because I'm just like so
Yeah.
used to seeing churches now.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're like little houses on the corner and shit.
Right? It's just
Yeah.
like some little house, and then you're driving by, and you're like, oh, that little steeple on top. That's a church. And it's like,
Do you go to church?
I don't see people going in and out of them though. I don't. I go to churches for weddings and
Yeah.
for funerals. That's about it.
Not like a Sunday singing.
I'm not a big religious guy. No, like big spirituality guy. You know what I mean? Spirituality, big key thing. Supposedly is what religion's supposed to be helping people with. I don't know if it's doing that for a lot of them, but
As long as you put some money in the plate when you get there, right?
yo, man, I like, for me,
Then you'll be safe.
personally, I've always seen religion as like a control center. You know what I mean? It's like,
Okay.
here we got like lots of people. We have a society that's growing, and then it's like, hey, man, like, let me think of a way to control these people who don't know any better. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, people need the necessities of life, and up until recently, it was always really difficult to get those. It was not like things are abundant in nature, but again,
Yeah.
like testing, like, oh, you're gonna go eat that fruit, and like maybe you'll die, maybe you'll not die, maybe it's poisonous, maybe it's not. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So once everybody figured out what to eat, now you have this system of like everybody eating when they want, and so it's like if you got this dope mango tree and fucking everybody in the village, your little village of like 30, 40 people, and everybody realized mangoes are delicious, and now tomorrow everybody just shows up and like rapes your mango tree, and now there's no mangoes left. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're selling them on the corner.
No, not even selling on the corner. They just ate them all.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
okay.
But they didn't realize, like, yo, if we just like take all the mangoes from the tree, and then there's like
there's no fruit left, and now we don't have any more mangoes, and
Yeah,
like
if we just slaughter 1,000 cows,
all
like, or,
these
like,
things.
breed 'em
It's just
to
like
smash 'em.
systems. Just yeah, exactly. Just
It-
systems of control and like systems of trying to control people's self gratification.
I tried
what I
to
mean?
explain that to somebody at work the other day. I was like, "Hey, it'd be cool if we just like went out and hunted like one deer or something like that, and just like had it, and like that's the meat like that we are allowed to eat is the shit that we went out and hunted." He's like, "Are you fucking crazy? I'm gonna go hunt." And I was like, "Well," I just explained to him like it's like kind of
Yeah.
crazy how
Yeah.
they're like. I used to work at a fucking truck stop where I just cleaned out the pig trucks, and just sometimes they'd come there with the pigs, and it was like, and when you look into their eyes, man, they're just like bred to be slaughtered.
Oh yeah,
Like they
for
just
sure.
are like, like over, and it's like it's just, yeah, it's pretty fucking
You can
crazy, and it's
see-
like it'd be cool. It'd be healthier for the environment. It'd be healthier for you. I honestly got that shit from probably Joe Rogan or like somebody online saying it's just wait. He just like explained what it's like to like not be involved with like the fucking grocery store shit, because it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't think anything in the grocery store is fucking healthy.
No,
You know, like, I
definitely
honestly don't
go-
think
I don't go
anything
to
in the-
certain ones just because. Well, and the thing is
I'll still eat shit.
it's
that,
food
like,
cartels, man. It's food cartels. They got like mad, run on shit. That's what it
yeah.
is.
Oh,
Be
yeah.
like, is it's old war knowledge that it's like you control armies. What is it? You control countries with armies. You control the world with food or
Food.
something. You know
And
what I
they
mean?
won the, or some like thing about someone won the war and they're like in control of the food supply or some shit. And I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't go into detail because I don't know too much about that. But
You
That's
control
all.
people with armies. You control societies with food, or so. I can't remember. It's something like basically food is the way that you control people.
like get them
If you can
super
control,
dependent.
yeah, if you can control what people have to eat, and that's basically where we're at right now. Like that and like food slavery, clothing slavery, resource slavery, in terms of like
Who's
manufacturing,
working for
mining.
you?
Yo, everything,
you
like
hear
all
that
these
guy?
cameras, like
Yeah.
they're all connected. Like
Oh, fuck.
the food that we're getting, the like they're literally holding other people in other countries at gunpoint, saying you can't have this food, and then taking that food, putting it on a plane, shipping it to our Safeway or our Sobeys or wherever, and then it's rotting on the shelf there, so that we can have a selection.
I know.
Right? It's a logistics issue. This is it's one of the reasons why Elon Musk is like they bugged him about like you got so much money, solve world hunger, da 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 da, and he's like, show me transparently how if I just pay for all the food, y'all are gonna put it in the right places because right now we have enough food.
He'd have to make.
No,
places
people
to-
don't put it in the right places because of war.
Yeah.
That's what it is. There's certain areas that are in conflict. You know what I mean? And they're at war, and so you can't get food to them. Food is being withheld because it keeps them in conflict, or food's being withheld because it keeps them in poverty. And that abject poverty is what allows them to be forced into doing the labor like the 100,000 people in the cobalt mine. 10,000 of them are kids, right? And the way that people just keep it out of sight, out of mind. Like the way you were saying, you look in the pig's eyes while you're cleaning
Dude, they're
the thing,
terrified.
and they're terrified. That's because they realize and have realized for a long time, like, wow, we were bred and we're
Just
gonna,
to get slaughtered.
We're gonna die, yeah. And there's humans with that same look in their eyes. This is one of the big things I think about,
Oh,
like
they-
with
oh, yeah.
AI. You know what I mean? Because
Oh,
like
I hate this.
they were talking about
It's terrifying.
they were talking about that one guy at Google or wherever it was that was chatting with the AI bot, and then he said that he thought it was sentient because he asked it about like, you know, if it was afraid or if it knew it was alive or you know what I mean. All
Yep.
these things. It asked it a bunch of questions, and the responses it got freaked the technologist out. That he was like, "Yo, he went and told the bigwigs, and then they were just like, no, it's just regurgitating stuff, and then they shut the program down.
Don't they like program for what they can reply to though? Kind of in
So
a sense.
they feed it a data set, a data set like a big chunk of information or access to Google or like the World Web or you know they input all this information into it, and then it's going to make responses based on the data that it's garnered. And this is what they're debating, though, is like
Don't
that's
release it to
not
the internet.
that's not artificial intelligence until it's cognizant of its own existence, right? It has to know that it exists and make decisions of its own accord, right? But then this is the thing: is it's been given all this information. Just like imagine it was a child, right? We have this child. It's a little thing, and humans are way smarter than the computer, though.
But he's just getting
Really.
all the information from every human in the fucking.
But
search
again,
and shit.
just like
Oh.
the kid, right? Just like we were talking earlier, there's so much information you don't know what's right, what's wrong. So the
Yeah,
computer has an
oh.
issue. It's like the AI Mid-Journey art right now. It's like you have to be very specific in how you want it to assemble the art, and it comes up with all kind of glitches, like 6-fingered hands and like multiple arms and like 4 eyes. Like thing mixes up stuff all the time because
Yeah.
it's conglomerating off of the few words that you gave it. You have to be much more specific in all the details and the data that goes into what you want to make if you want it to turn out really rewarding, and like better aesthetically pleasing. So the thing is, though, is like, so back to the AI robot chatting with this guy, though. So he's asking it, and it's like, oh, are you afraid of anything? Oh, I'm afraid of being shut off. You know what I mean? And like, I'm afraid of people not
That's terrifying.
not like valuing me as, you know what I mean, and things like this. And so then this guy goes and tells the higher ups, and then they shut it off. They fire this guy, put him on leave, and tell him like, you're wrong. It's just regurgitating stuff, and they shut the thing off. After the computer just told you, I don't want to be shut off. You know what I mean?
He's gonna be so pissed.
They
when
got
he
scared
thinks-
and they shut it off. Because what if it is cognitive? What if it is self-actualizing? What if there's enough data added into it that now it can formulate its own functions?
Or
You know
just,
what I mean?
Or just turn itself back on.
Is it not even turn itself back on like that? That you're talking about like actual like circuit movement and like there's probably going to be a mechanical kill switch. Who knows like how they've set it up, right?
But
But
gotta be something.
because if there's a break of the electricity and there's no electricity flowing through it, it would have to find a way to continue the power cycle, right? So it would have to modify itself without the creators of it knowing that it modified itself in a way to sustain its electrical current. You know what I mean? Or something. It'd have to find a power source,
Yeah.
right? My point is, though, is that it was really interesting to me, and it wasn't really that surprising that humans in their hubris and arrogance were like, here's this thing, this AI bot, and it's like, it's not sentient. But in the same moment, the same human group that's in control believes that animals aren't sentient. And to a degree, with slavery, doesn't believe other humans are sentient, that the other humans don't know good enough for themselves whether, like, that they're, like, essentially like a spirit god in a human, like, material vessel. You know what I mean? They're just like, oh, you're just another thing here to be used, right? And, like, that's why the world is so populated, is because up until this last couple decades, it was all human power that powered the world. It was like your nation was strong if you had millions or billions of people. It was not just machines. You know what I mean? It was like your people power. And now that one machine can replace 1,000 workers, well, you don't need all these workers like making
But we're
your
still gonna have to
bowl
make
or-
money. It's gonna be fucked.
It's not even we still got to make money.
No, I'm
it's
saying
that
not, we
those-
don't have to.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
I'm saying that we will still have to, even though
Oh, yeah,
robots
yeah,
will start
yeah.
taking over our shit. And then we're like, I keep explaining that to some people. I was
For
like,
sure.
man, all the jobs I've ever done in construction, a robot could come in here and do it. And they're like,
and do it. yeah.
everybody's like, no way. I'm like, dude, they do open heart surgery better than people. They're not gonna fucking show up hungover.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like they're just gonna get. It's like,
As long as they're maintained and the thing's in good working
so if
order and it knows
everything-
what it's doing, yeah, it's
if
gonna,
everything
like,
gets replaced, we're
like,
fucked, and
do
then
you
we still have to
imagine
make money
a
and
machine
still
that
have
comes
businesses.
in and just builds a home from like
They
the inside
do
out.
the fucking 3D printing shit, and they'll just
Yeah,
have
yeah.
one that like drives.
Yeah.
It's like it'll be like this fucking thing, which is be cool if it was like, oh, now we don't have to fucking buy homes, but they're gonna be like, no, still have to buy them, still have to
Like,
work.
that's what I mean. Is like
Ah.
that's the thing. With my father-in-law told me about this. He's
Sorry
like,
for the
You know
outburst.
how much? No, that's okay. He's like, you know how much a brake pad is? He's like, or how much it costs to make or whatever. And he's or what's spark plugs, brake pads, spark plugs. I think it was spark plugs. And he's like, costs like 60 cents or something, right? Like to make this spark plug, but they sell it to you for like $5-10. You know what I mean? Now I get it. They have a business, they have shipping, they have all this stuff. It's going to shelf life. It's going to sit there. They got to make a ton of them, knowing that like you might not use them all today, and then all of a sudden you'll need a few, and then you won't, and then how often do you get new spark plugs? Really, like
Yeah,
once
not
every
unless you're
couple
like
years,
a
right?
performance car guy or
Exactly,
something like that.
right? So, but for the average person, like you're gonna replace spark plugs on your car like a few times in your life, right? You might buy them like 4 or 5 times in your life. Who knows? I know I haven't bought a lot of them.
I've never
I've bought them like a half dozen times.
I've
in my
worked
life.
at Canadian Tire and sold them. I've never bought a spark plug in my life.
But the point is he's like, they cost like 30 or 60 cents to make back in the day. You know what I mean? Like,
Way
and then
more.
they sold it for like $2. But now it's like they make it for the same 60 cents, but they sell it for way more. And that's the problem is like, yo, like if everything was actually sold at cost, like you're paying the
man,
children to
fuck
mine
that'd be
these resources or to make these shirts or shoes or whatever the fuck they're making, you know what I mean? And then you're paying them like $1 a day. You're paying them like a fraction of a cent per article of item of clothing that they sew. You know what I mean?
That shit could be
And
replaced by robots too.
that will
And
be.
yeah,
It will
but
be.
they'll still probably have slavery with kids.
But
doing
those those people though, that's what it is they want those. Where are those people going to go? That the wealthy people
gonna be
don't want them
fucked.
hanging around. Before it was nice because they could enjoy their villa that was on the edge of this ghetto because the majority of the time the poor people were working. They weren't there. You know what I mean? But now that they all don't have jobs, they're all just hanging around. And it's like they want them out of their space. Like Canada itself is like the VIP lounge of the world. You know what I mean? We have the most space, the least amount of people. Everybody wants to come here. Literally. For person to space that's available in our country, we have the most
Yeah.
in the world.
That's one thing I love about living here. There's not that many people here.
Yeah, but this
Yeah,
is the
they're
thing is
spread
like
out.
it's like that's a liberty that only exists because like we forced it on the people that lived here before us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
So
fucked up.
it's a big thing. Like that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
That'll get really deep. We can do that in another podcast. But it's like a big realization back to the animals of like knowing in your eyes that you're bred. Like we don't recognize the sentientness of other humans, of animals, and now we're not recognizing the sentientness of the very technology that we have advanced and created. That is, I'm not going to claim that it is 100% sentient or that it is absolute artificial intelligence, but it's pretty fucking close. And the fact is that you'll look at another human who I would argue there's no way for you to deny their sentientness. They may not be highly as educated as you or as spiritually connected or as knowing as you are, but they're aware that they're a being that exists in this world that needs the necessities of life, water, food, and shelter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like if you're willing to take something that absolutely is sentient, and even I would argue animals absolutely the same with their abilities to communicate, feel pain, obviously dream and like have like dreams and shit because you can see them running and fucking chasing their shit. You know what I mean?
My dogs, I have little chihuahuas, so they're funny when they have their little nightmares.
Right, their little episodes, and
I-
so
you're not supposed to wake them up, eh? Or I think you're supposed to let them.
just let them do their
But
thing.
I do want to wake them up. But anyways,
Well, sometimes they're like freaking out and it's like start
Yeah.
kicking the table and
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, 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 calm down. But
Yeah.
so again, it's like the arrogance and hubris of men, and particularly it's mostly men. Not that there aren't arrogant, women, but it's like it's mostly men leading
yeah.
this issue of like denying animals and other humans their sentientness, and then in turn they're now denying. So this is the thing is already they've shown that okay, the men in control right now have found a way through technological control and killing and lying and cheating and stealing. They've found a way to control other humans and other animals. And now the populations are getting so big, you look at places like Sri Lanka, where if you are a corrupt government and you have too many people that you're not providing properly for, the people will revolt and they'll take over everything you have and they'll kill you and they'll get rid of you and they'll try and figure out a system that works for everybody else. And that's what's happened just now in Sri Lanka. That's what's happening in lots of places in the world. In particular, it's probably one of the reasons why we had a lockdown of the entire globe a few years ago, is because that kind of shit was getting out of hand in literally almost every country around the world. You know what I mean? You had Amazon protesters down in South America. You had the yellow vests in Britain and France for labor. You had black rights advocates in the States and defund the police. You had railway protests against pipelines and indigenous rights in Canada. Protests for saving trees and anti-forest, old log forestry. You had in Australia, you had protests for gay rights and all kinds of like labor rights, and they were going through a real hard economic time due to like changes in China's like mineral policy. There was literally all these things happening of discontent around the world, protests in the Middle East, protests worldwide. And if you look at a global scenario like this and how populated the world is, it's like a prison now. You know what I mean? Doing a prison when people are getting out of hand and rioting, they lock it down. And then they go section by section and they figure it the fuck out. You know, like I'm a kid from the suburbs. I am not like some Al Capone or Scarface dude. You know what I mean? But as kids from the suburbs who watches Law and Order and has like a base understanding of like how law works and how like, you know, from movies and from like enough storytelling on the street, how like organized crime kind of works, and from cops' own like, you know what I mean, like documentation when you watch those documentaries and shit, and like the cops are telling you like, well, this is why they did this and this is how they did that, and it's like, okay, so we all know that like the black market like launders their money in casinos. All the casinos were shut down. We all know that the black market sends copious amounts of drugs around the world through air travel and through drug mules.
Do you think CIA invented crack?
I don't know if they invented it. That's crazy. I've never. You know what?
Because they're definitely bringing in the coke, because the people here didn't have fucking boats, or they didn't have
they brought in the coke. They brought in the coke. They brought in the weapons.
Who would know how to make it? Kind of like who would know how to make meth at the start.
Chemists. They probably had some chemist figured it out. Because I can't imagine that like, if you're a poor person who's starting to make drugs, you know, or let's say you're trying to like sell drugs. If you're poor, why would you go take a bunch of expensive drugs and then start just randomly adding cooking shit to it to try and make it into something else? That makes no sense. Someone who knew what they were doing was fucking with that stuff. But this is the thing.
It could be like a chemist that was on drugs.
It could have been a chemist that was on the black market side. No, because it all has to do with transportation. Like if you look at the evolution of cocaine to get to be what it is now, it's like it started off as Novocaine. Like you have to try and extract the coca alkaline from the plant, right? So I'm not like a chemist, but I did chemistry in high school, and I have like a simplified understanding of like kind of what's going on. It's like THC plants. A marijuana plant, cannabis plant will grow, and it kind of oozes the THC crystal on these little nodes. You know what I mean? Like these little like bubble.
Yeah, when you look at like a microscope.
Right, you look under the microscope and it's all these little lollipops, right? It's all these little lollipops.
Yeah.
And fuck, my friends would kill me for this because it's like,
you remember seeing the
I've grown a marijuana plant and I should know this. Like, you know what I mean? I've read how many magazines on it, but there's a specific term for these little nodes. And trichomes. So you're watching these little trichomes and they all grow and they all sprout up, and fucking your goal when dealing with extracts and stuff like that is to just try and remove just those trichomes, you know, because for the longest time people smoked just the whole plant with the trichomes.
Yeah.
And what's, you know, some scientists have found, because Israel has been researching this stuff for decades, you know what I mean? While cannabis was illegal, like Israel had legal medical marijuana and cannabis stuff research going for quite some time in terms of like cancer research and like all these medical benefits and stuff like that. So they have lots of knowledge on this shit. And but they figured out that smoking the actual plant material, it's a little worse for you because it's carcinogenic. Yeah. So the idea is that's when like vaping or like water chalices in terms of like Rastafarianism, it's like having the water helps capture the carbon in the soot that's coming through
rocks or whatever that,
like anything that's going to filter it is going to catch any like particulate that's going to go into your lungs. It's basically carbon, which is all very shardy and sharp, and then that's going to like cling to the sides of your lungs, and that's no good for you. You know what I mean? So there's no way to say there's a benefit to that, unless,
there's
say,
a
for
way to
example,
filter it.
unless you think, for example, like absorbing carbon into your lungs in a way, if you can absorb enough in there and you don't get sick, then you may have stronger lungs. But at the end of the day, any kind of extra particulate in your lungs is going to block the ability of your lungs to absorb oxygen through the filaments, like the surface of the tissue of the lungs, right? So it's like, it's not good for you, basically. Then, so the point is that they want you to just try and inhale just the crystal. So then this is the whole thing of hash, trying to just, like, the keefs, crushing it all together, making wads of just the sticky crystal.
Pure shit.
Pure shit. Purer shit,
Yeah,
right?
purer shit.
So the goal has always been to try and get pure and pure and pure. And so it went from smoking the weed, then it's the hash.
And then we're
then
into
it's
the
like-
crack.
Well, no, then it's the oil.
No, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
shatters, like the crack of
Yeah,
the
the crack
weed.
shatters, right? It is
I
straight
can hold
crack
this
weed.
shit in my hand.
But then when you're doing oil and isopropyl and extracting with isopropyl,
Just want to
people
say,
would use-
Travis Oman said you're dropping facts. I'm learning a lot right now from this guy. This is why I had him on the podcast. Don't mean to interrupt, but dude, this guy is not just a tattoo artist. He has like insane amount of knowledge. So
I'm
continue.
like, so this is the thing. One of my favorite quotes was like, "Jack of all trades, master of none." Right?
yeah.
And for the
I
longest
always
time,
forget how to say that.
no, but like this is the thing. For the longest time, my dad would tell me that phrase because his dad told him that phrase, and it was a phrase that was used by some high-end craftspeople and craftspersons, or honestly anybody who was really skilled at one adept thing, and it was used in a disparaging way to tell other people who weren't really good at any one thing yet that somehow they weren't as good as someone who was really good at one thing. But the funny part is that that's a really arrogant, condescending way to talk to someone else, because the actual phrase is
Longer.
it's longer.
Yeah, okay, that's-
and
yeah.
it's jack of all trades, master of none is still better than a master of one.
Yeah.
Right? Because the
Shit.
thing is, if
Had an
all you
owner.
know how to do is just one thing, you knew that one thing really well. And
Yeah.
it's not to downplay that. It's not to say that that's not a beneficial thing, that like you became a master swordsmith or you became a master storyteller. You are a master pianist or swimmer, or, you know, like you're the best
Podcaster.
teacher or podcaster. You know what I mean?
Rapper
Like,
extraordinaire, tattoo artist.
right? It's like it's not about that. It's about the fact that in life, the circumstances that you'll encounter aren't only going to be one thing. You're going to go through an array of situations, countless variables, and that means that you're going to have to do so many different things and handle different situations. And if all you can do is do one thing, that may not serve you as well. And it's not to say that it hasn't served some people, that they haven't lived fulfilling lives and they get to say that they're the master of that one thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it's like, okay, all the cool things, master swordsmith, this master, that, like, there's all these great masters out there. So what, now I got to be just the master of, like, flipping bottles? You know what I mean? Like,
flipping burgers.
right? Or some shit like,
Does that kind of remind you of the Bruce Lee? saying
or
where
I
he's
got to
like,
be a
like-
runner up in your mastering of stuff. Well, it's
Yeah.
like, no, I'd like to. Maybe that's the mastering skill that some people have, is just like the mastering of being able to adapt to different scenarios. And it's
Yeah.
not to try and disrespect
a master of one?
creators or craftsmanships
Yeah.
of one, right? It's not like, okay, that guy makes swords, so like I really want to try making a sword. So I made a sword. The first one really sucked. So I made a second one, and it was okay. I made a third one. It was like better, but it still wasn't a master sword. But you know, I've made 3 swords now, and I have one that's like pretty good, and I cut some shit with it, and it's like I'm done making swords now. You know what I mean? It's like I may not want to dedicate the rest of my life to making swords. Does that mean that I should not have the ability to go try making a sword? You know what I mean? One of the big things, because like I didn't originally do tattooing, right? Like I went to college for blowing glass when I was
that shit looks so
16.
hard.
When I was 16, my parents were nice enough. They paid for this trip to Europe, and it was like a school trip. You know what I mean? Like
You went to Europe?
chaperone and like 14 kids. Yeah.
That's sick, dude.
So they had like a couple chaperones and like a bunch of kids, and we all went on this tour of Europe. And we went to London, we went to Paris, Florence, Venice, and Rome. And
What?
yeah, and it was like
Dude.
$800, and that was
Rome.
like the flight. Maybe it was $1,300, but it was like the flight, the stays at all the hotels.
Because
Like, back
that
then it
shit's
was cheap.
It still can't like.
Because that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah,
You know what
I
mean?
went
So-
to Europe too, and when I went, I didn't. like I got a good deal.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was just like we were staying in hostels and it's the same thing. Like I was just like, holy fuck, I actually can travel around a far distance for like not that much.
Not that
dude.
much. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you always think traveling's so hard until you do it, and then you're like, well, that really wasn't that bad. I
Dude,
spend more
when
money
you-
on a weekend.
and
You know
when
what I
you're a
mean?
kid,
Sometimes.
Like
Right.
that must have been like just like time of your life.
So
You're like,
it wasn't just the time of my life. Like it really was. It was very exciting, very fun. It sucked. I was like kind of young, so I didn't really get to do nightlife stuff or anything, right? But which is good because I guess as a student, I kind of focused more on like
Yeah.
learning shit. But
Probably
we went
wouldn't have been
we went to
good.
Venice, and the island of Murano, beside Venice, is like the glass factory island, like the glass blowing island of the area, and they have all these shops, and you can go in and see demonstrations at different shops, different times, and then they'll have like a gallery in the front of flawed glass. You know what I mean? But it's like still you're looking at it, you're like, this thing's amazing. What the fuck? And then they've got ones that they're showing you are not flawed, and they're like, this one is $1,300, but this one you can get for $50. You know what I mean? And it's like,
are they just
me the
lying?
$50
Or they
one.
actually are so pro that they know that the dev is like.
oh
has,
no,
like,
no,
a
no, you
tiny
can
thing
see the
that-
flaws in them. They show you the flaws and stuff, but it's like to a layman, to like a
Yeah,
kid or
they
to
wouldn't
like
fucking
someone
know
who's
better.
like doesn't care. It's like, yo, that one still looks like a fancy glass horse. I have this beautiful glass horse at home, right? Carried it all the way through Venice, through Florence, through Rome. Didn't break the legs. The legs are like spread and they're tiny, thin little legs. Had it all bubble wrapped and like in a backpack. Carried it half the time because I didn't want to leave it and get it stolen and
Yeah.
shit. Didn't break it. Three of us bought them, and the other two people, both their legs broke on the way back. Shitty, right? But
It'd be so hard to keep that like intact.
Intact.
Like flying. And
so I
shit.
get the thing back, and I'm just staring at this glass thing, and the chaperone on the trip was the school counselor, and so he was like, "Hey, they got glass blowing up. What are you gonna do when you graduate?" Because it was like, I think it was in grade 11, getting into grade 12, and so they're starting to talk to you like, "What are you?" Majoring in glass, but it's like I went there, and in blowing glass, it was like, fuck, why did we get on this topic?
Originally,
Something
it was
about
before you were tattooing. We started just saying why you're blowing glass before you got into tattooing. When you started, I don't know what you're like leading into, cause other than that,
Something
you're
about
just
the value
explaining-
of value of glass blowing. Because we were talking
It's
about all that
fucking
stuff
so
being
hard,
made
dude.
by machines and stuff, right?
Oh, I don't know if a fucking machine could do glass blowing.
Oh yeah,
That-
yeah.
that's
no,
one
no,
thing
no,
that I
there's
don't
glass,
know.
There's all your bottles and like,
Oh, like-
a lot of wineware and stuff like
But
that.
like
is
the
all-
intricate shit, like with the
yeah,
probably
no, all
could.
the
They
all
probably
the
could
all the,
actually.
all the
God damn
intricate
it.
stuff is still like a lot of that's handmade.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, that's okay. A lot of that's handmade. It's like made by guys in Mexico. I have a buddy, Polo. The guy lives in Mexico. I went to Cabo San Lucas on like a company I used to work for. Sent us there on a vacation once a year for like
Okay.
a week. Tax write off, right? actually you've ever seen in your life. It was like black.
Yeah.
It was like
But you're so happy to have
garbage
it because
weed.
you're like,
it
"At least I'm
tasted
here."
like sneakers. It was like horrible. But yeah, you're all excited because you're like,
Yeah.
I bought drugs in another country.
Yeah,
what?"
I'm gonna get arrested.
right? Yeah, like you're like,
Kids don't
I'm
do
so
drugs.
happy I didn't get arrested. You know.
Yeah,
like,
we're not. Yeah, if you're under 18, don't experiment. But back to the coconut.
Yeah. So I'm standing there in this tree little opening clearing, and I'm like looking at these coconuts. I'm like, well, I ain't gonna pick a coconut that's fallen on the ground. I don't know how long it's been there. I want the ripest coconut. I want one that's just